All right, we're ready. But let's wait, everybody. Still people are coming in. All right, Bill, you can get started if you want to.
Hello and welcome to the Marketing Innovation Committee virtual workshop. I'm Bill Meyerling, IFA Vice President of Marketing Communications, joined today by the chair of the Marketing and Innovation Committee, Sherry Fishman. Sherry, please.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our virtual workshop. We're very excited to get started. We have two very telling topics that I think will get a ton of buzz and a lot of great conversation and tons of value for you to bring back to your organizations. As far as the format goes, we are going to have our intros and then I'm going to introduce you to the host, and that is Ryan Hicks, one of our committee members and famous for his Modern Business podcast and of course being a big team player and a big part of Rallyo. So I wanted to tell you that we're going to cover two topics. First topic, he's going to describe all the topics and the format of how it's going to happen. So without further ado, why don't I just introduce Ryan to you? Go for it, Ryan.
Well, thank you, Sherry. I wouldn't say famous for the podcast, but I appreciate the kind words. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody, depending on where you're at. My name is Ryan Hicks, as Sherry just mentioned. And today, for the folks that are watching this later, today is May 11th, 2022, because there is a lot of good content over on the International Franchise Association's YouTube. I would actually encourage you guys, especially if you're an emerging brand, there's a lot of different topics. I would encourage you to subscribe to that. Before I kick it off, could everybody that's on the call, please click the participants tab, the little tab at the bottom, and add franchisor, franchisee, or supplier at the end of your name. So you're going to click participants, that'll show on the right-hand side, and find your name, click the more button, and you can rename that. So that will help us be able to get everybody into the appropriate rooms as it relates to our breakouts. And so the format is going to be the same as the past workshops. I really like this type of a format because it brings up very healthy discussion. I'm going to discuss a topic at the top of house here. We're going to put everybody into breakout rooms for facilitated discussion. And then we're going to convene back here, and the facilitator or if someone's chomping at the bit in the group and wants to share the nuggets of wisdom from the group, we're going to have one person from each group share kind of the top things that were discussed and surface those to the top. Since I'm hosting, I'll give a very brief introduction, kind of beyond what Sherry just mentioned. I've been in franchising for almost a decade. It's just so, by the way, so you're not looking at some random host and you don't have context. Primarily as a franchise supplier, as Sherry mentioned, but I've also invested as a franchisee here in Dallas, Texas, where I live, and I have invested into an emerging brand. And so I like to think that I'm a student of franchising, and I kind of have the holistic viewpoints on a lot of different topics and some strong point of views. But bottom line, I'm ecstatic to be hosting this and hope to host in the future if I'm invited back. So two topics for today. First is your three customer groups and how to serve them. And then the second topic is balance, consumer, and franchise marketing. And so before I'm going to give a little bit more color into that, we're going to go out into the breakout sessions, but I want to thank our facilitators for being here, for your leadership, for your time. And let's very quickly go around the room and have the facilitators say hello. We'll start with Brandy.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brandy Klustra, VP of Digital Marketing at Franwood. Nice to be here.
Good to see you again, Brandy. We have Mary from Eulerity.
Yeah, like Ryan said, I'm Mary from Eulerity. My name is Mary Hanula, and I'm the Director of Marketing. Very excited to be here.
We have Andrea from Newflex.
Hi, yeah, Andrea Pirrotti-Dranchak. It's a mouthful. I am the global enterprise director for Newflex. We represent 5 brands. One of them is Easy Hub, which is a co-working franchise brand.
Now I understand why you asked if I was in a co-working space a second ago, and I apologize
had
for
a vested
mispronouncing the
interest.
name.
That's okay.
And last but not least, unless I missed somebody, Sherry Fishman, which you guys just heard from, but Sherry, say hello.
Hello, Sherry Fishman, chair of this committee and CEO of Fishman PR. And I think was there another facilitator, Marcella?
Marcella, do we have one more?
Excuse me, what? Sorry.
Do we have another facilitator that we missed?
No, we have
Catherine.
6. We're all good.
Perfecto. So
Perfect.
jumping straight into the topics, and a lot of people are going to have different points of view on this, but this is why the format is beautiful. So your 3 customer groups and how to serve them. And when I think about this topic, it really is a lot to chew on, but kind of giving a little bit of a lens to maybe look at it as you go into the breakout sections. I want to talk about employees, which are your headquarters staff, your franchise owners, and your end customers. And for some people, it may be kind of counterintuitive to think of staff as a customer group, but the bottom line is this is where the planning and the execution of your marketing plan start. And these are the people that support your franchisees. So it's really important to begin that process thinking about your internal team, whether they're out remote or whether they're in a headquarters office or a combination of both. It's critical, in my opinion, to give them the leadership, the tools, the goals, all the things that they need to be successful at their job. And some of the other things that I think about are kind of ongoing education and coaching and mentoring and connecting with them and really understanding what their goals are in their career, what their why is, and where they're at along that journey. And ultimately, the bottom line is we want to measure their performance. We want to measure their satisfaction. And it's important to think about employees kind of holistically from this lens because it kind of starts from them. Then it goes into the franchisees, your franchise owners. Ultimately, they wrote a check to buy into your brand and they pay you a royalty every month. And it's important to understand where they're at in their journey, what they want and need most, provide them really the best marketing playbooks and support possible, because we're all marketers here on this call. And the bottom line is that our success is tied to their success. So how are you serving your employees, your franchisees, and then lastly, your end consumers? As marketers, we know our target audiences, we belabor in the research and really understanding who that is and who they are and what mediums they're on. And we work to speak with them and engage them on those mediums. And we have playbooks and ultimately we measure that success. And so as we break out into the discussion rooms and begin to talk about our employees, our franchisees, and end consumers as our customers, and kind of bringing a servant leadership approach and plan, I'll pose a few questions. And then again, I'll say that this could actually extend out. Bill was mentioning kind of top of house before we started that different folks, this may break out in a different way and be linear, but how are you serving your core groups? And for the topic of this conversation, these 3 groups, your HQ staff, your franchisees, and your end customers, how are you measuring and defining success? I think of franchisee surveys and NPS, and there's a whole different array of things, which I'm excited to hear what some of the groups are doing with most success, what tools and tips that you have. Another question that I would pose is, where are you strongest, where are you weakest, and where do you need help? Because the great thing about this type of community is we're going to pull away ideas from this group and we can bring them back to the brand. And so with that, let's go ahead and break out into the first discussion topic, which is your 3 customer groups and how to serve them.
All right. I'll send you guys to the group. You guys should see a pop-up coming up on your screen.
Have fun.
Can you, hi, Michael, can you, everyone that's still in this room, can you see the pop-up on your screen? Oh, leaving. Perfect. All right, everybody. Hey, Braxton. Are you there?
This meeting is being recorded.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Marcella, we're good to go, correct?
Yes, we're good to go.
Okay, welcome back. I think there were a lot of really great conversations going on, and what we're going to do now is go around the horn and hear some of the top takeaways and nuggets and all the rest that came out of each conversation. And so I will call on Brandy if you would like to go first, or your group would like to go first.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, we had a great group, lots of conversations. We initially started by focusing on the franchisee and their customer satisfaction and, how do you measure success there? I believe 100% that's, your number one customer initially, right? Your franchisee. So we talked through a lot of ways to measure your franchisee's success. Of course, we talked about the Franchise Business Review Survey that many of us use to just survey the system and see how we're doing, if making sure that we're heading in the right direction and identify any pain points early on. So that was talked through. Mary did talk through a really good point, which I think we've all felt in the past 2 years, which is we missed those regional meetings where we can sit down face to face and talk with owners and get their input and make sure they're feeling heard. I think that's key to any, to successfully serving your franchisees is making sure they feel heard and gathering, the information that they're feeling in the streets, in their stores, in their studios. So we talked through that. We did talk through the importance of just having those growth plans in place to be able to measure the success of the business, how their sales are they, increasing their sales? Is their lead flow coming in and healthy? So having all those metrics in place is also key to measuring success for a franchisee, because of course, everyone is a franchisee to make money. So that was one thing that we talked through. And we did discuss, Rebecca mentioned that there's a lot of, they use a franchise advisory council. I know some franchisors have the National Marketing Committee, and that's a great way just to gather information and better understand, what franchisees are challenged with in the field, in the marketing sense, and really any sense. And then, gather people together again to collaborate and really just get their buy-in and their input on, the different strategies that the business might be focused on. And then from there, if you have the right influential franchisees, they will help communicate the message, the strategy. So that all leads to, your overall success of franchisees if they're happy, right? So a lot of talking about collaboration, getting franchisees input, and of course, measuring the business goals and making sure that they're heading in the right direction and they're growing their business.
Beautiful. Well, I said at the top of the house that this is a chewy topic because it touches so many different things. And so excited to hear about the other groups. We will kick it over to Mary from Eulerity, your group.
Awesome. No, I really had a great group. It was awesome getting to meet a bunch of new people and seeing some old friends. I have a few key takeaways. We talked about how franchisees are oftentimes in different stages of the business model. You have to have different communications with each. We mentioned how communication has to be customized to the culture of the brand. You have to make information easily accessible for people so they can debrief on their own time, especially when you have franchisor clients that are pretty busy. Consistency of who you are and communications is key in owning the conversation and responding to client leads. We had a really good conversation about how different companies track those on the back end and make sure that you're providing the best customer support possible. Thanks.
Beautiful. We will kick it to Andrea from New Flags.
Okay, cool. So Heather kind of really focused on, I mean, we have this great resignation, right? So Heather really focused on the human, on the people, on the employees and her team, and trying to create an incredible team based on authenticity. And in order to do that, there has to be this foundation of trust. A lot of this trust comes from transparency. A lot of this trust comes from creating an environment of accountability. And one of the exciting things that she, shared was that she really creates an environment where her people feel amazing. And so that way, when they really feel great about what they're doing and who they are and how they're supporting the work they're producing, so that then when they go out to the world and they may have a bad experience with somebody, whether it's a supplier or a franchisee, they are almost have a shield of protection around them. Michael comes from the world of accounting. There's been tons of attrition in that category. And what he did was he listened to his customers, he listened to his employees, and he listened to his customers. His customers asked, they wanted to have face-to-face contact. They wanted to have people to connect with the accountants. And so rather than forcing his employees to go back into the office, which is where they don't want to be, he said, fine, go out and be with customers. So they're on site with their customers, they're at events, and they're making those connections in an important way. So it's just not the idea of FaceTime. Two more, sorry. Lamar talked about understanding the needs of the franchisee. And even though you belong to the same brand, so this is your stakeholder, your franchisee. So even if you belong to the same brand, the franchisee will have different needs, of course, as we know, based on their local market, number one, and also based on their local needs. They're humans, right? They have different needs. So you can't take a blanket approach. You have to localize your strategy to make sure that you're meeting the individual needs of the franchisee. Madeline had a great idea and a great quote that you have to communicate with somebody how they want to be communicated with. And her company built a platform that supports that. And Matthew is new and he's going around and doing a listening tour. And he's trying to find out from his franchisees what they want, what's working, what they need. But I think that the general, overarching messages, make that human connection one-to-one, find out what their needs are, how they want to be communicated with, and adapt your model, your style to meet the individual needs of that stakeholder.
Excellent summation. I was in that session for a bit, and Heather also mentioned a strength finder tool, which I think is super solid. We will kick it to Catherine, and Catherine with IFA in your group.
Hey everyone, I did not introduce myself at the top. I am Katherine Patterson, Director of Communications with IFA. Nice to meet all of you and glad to be here participating. A couple key notes from our group. We really spent a lot of time at the top talking about how there are 5 audiences rather than just 3. With potential franchisees and somebody already mentioned the great resignation and employee recruitment is top of mind. So we spent some time discussing how to reach, how all the tactics are different, especially reaching when you're talking about potential franchisees versus existing franchisees. And then this 5th audience now in recruitment and how many brands and companies are spending a lot of money and resources and a new focus on employee recruitment. We did not have any major takeaways of success in that area. So if other groups have that, I know we'd all be curious to hear some more on that. And then a few other areas we touched on in addition to addressing those 2 extra audiences is how important it is to meet any of these groups where they are. Exactly what Andrea was just saying about communicating how they want to be communicated to. Ken with Learning Zen shared how they are using embracing video and new social media channels, whether it's TikTok or YouTube, and doing new interviews and really making a new focus in areas that they haven't before. And then another point addressed is when reaching potential clients on the supplier side is to figure out what the pain they're experiencing is and how you can come in and provide that. And then the last thing I'll mention on more of a lighter note, but we had a lot of good conversation about it, is is swag. We have a lot of the folks in our group mentioned how well swag has worked, whether it was at convention, at trade shows, or meeting potential franchisees, or even with your own employees, sometimes spending the money for a new Yeti mug or a nice shirt, or it goes a long way. People have that piece of brand recognition, because that's what it all comes back to. And that's what a lot of everything that we were talking about focuses on, is raising that brand awareness.
Completely agree. Brand awareness, brand recognition, loyalty, it drives everything that we want as it relates to customer acquisition, employees, all the things. And I like how the group kind of discussed beyond just the three that we kind of initially talked about, because it's extremely spot on. We'll kick it to Sherry, and then we have one more after that.
Hello, everybody. We had a very lively conversation and everyone talked, which I was very excited about. And we have a whole different, we have a twist on what has been said. So I'm so thrilled to have Irene share, because what she did within her company really kicked it off and was the foundation of what we discussed. So Irene, why don't you share, and then we'll add where we need to.
Got it. Hi, everybody. I work at a private equity firm and oversee 28 different brands. We measure everything. And so, everyone's been talking about the employee problem. How do we ensure employee success? And we, like everybody, started throwing different tactics out to improve employee success, right? Let's increase pay. Let's give them more Chotskys. Let's give them massages. And none of that was really moving the employee success KPI. So we said, let's take a step back. Let's use common marketing strategy to truly build a plan. So we stopped all the tactics and started with building what's our ICP, what's our ideal employee profile, what's the persona of the employees, what do we bring them? What's the value prop? So classic go-to-market, right? Marketing, we apply that to the employee funnel. So we have a friend of funnel, a customer funnel, and now we have an employee funnel. And so we use the same go-to-market tactics on the employee funnel and have KPIs to measure throughout the behavioral indicators, leading, lagging indicators. And it's made a huge difference. And probably the biggest aha, especially with the franchisees, because we taught them this, is looking at, you guys all probably use LTV to CAC, right? Let's use that on the employee funnel, because everyone's like, oh, I don't want to pay more. I don't want to spend this on recruiting. But if you look at the lifetime value of one employee and you measure it to the CAC, it makes people go, wow, I'm being quite cheap because this one employee can drive this much revenue. So back to you, Sherry.
And I thought it made so much sense, because we're in essence, we're supporting them by doing this, by hiring the right employees to drive all this, correct? And then another point that was really important was talking about empathizing. And there was leading with empathy, as has been told throughout some of the summaries here, and adding the positivity in our communications, being in front of them, informing all parties, all groups, so that it's not a surprise to the franchisee, it's not a surprise to the employees. What we learned during COVID is that if you stay connected in any way possible, then they feel like they should be loyal and dedicated to the organization, to the brand, and it works. Did I miss anything, anybody?
That's excellent.
Okay.
Very, very good. We will go over to Bill, and then we'll have the next topic after that. Bill, and your group.
I'm bad in cleanup here, but just need to give props to Andrea for basically spying on our breakout and giving the report already in such an articulate fashion. I think that it's really interesting. Our group had incredible suppliers, franchisors, and folks that range the gamut from emerging brands to large international brands. And so the audiences or the customer bases might be the same, but we manifest and engage them in ever so slightly different ways. The big takeaways that I have jotted down here from the conversation were, really that communication to customers or engaging customers starts at home. It starts with the employees first to make sure that the brand is really strong amongst all of the employees. I think that kind of ties to what Irene was just sharing there as well. That if you know exactly what your top level employees are doing and how they're doing or carrying out the brand, it's going to carry through all the way to the end customer. Following on the idea of culture starting at home and getting internal buy-in, even from other groups within the brand, perhaps legal that might do the enforcement or what have you, going into how to communicate with the disparate customer bases from the headquarters. Josie had a really interesting perspective there of basically hunting where the ducks are. Using platforms that already exist to reach customers as opposed to trying to invent new platforms. So is that a Facebook group to communicate with franchisees or a LinkedIn group to communicate with your employees at headquarters? Increasingly, folks have been moving to Google Business Profile to drive end user customer interactions. And then there is also an interesting conversation in our group about the use of apps. I mean, I know personally, I get about 1,000 emails a day, and it's nearly impossible to keep up with them or respond to any of them and also do my job. I'm sure all of you are in that same boat, and probably the franchise owners and consumers are. So some of the brands out there are considering different ways, moving to text message to communicate with franchise owners, or even building an app. So that there's actual better measurement and two-way communication outside of the traditional email channels. I know fragmentation of message is a challenge today, but when you're running a franchise business, it's important that the same message gets to all the people at the same time, all the time. And that's, I think, an ongoing challenge for all of us.
All right, a lot of very excellent takeaways. We are going to move to go into the second and last topic. We're probably going to have to limit the feedback to your top one or two takeaways on this topic. So just to tee it up, the topic is balanced consumer and franchise marketing. And so historically, we talked about this kind of at the top, but there historically has been a divide between the consumer marketing and franchise marketing departments and roles, and understandably so, because marketing to a person who buys a $5 sandwich or a $50 massage or whatever your product or service may be, it's completely different than marketing to someone who's investing $500,000 or $1 million into a brand. And so in this breakout, what we want to do is explore the connection points between the two and how they can work together and fuel more of what you want to see. If you zoom out big picture, this is kind of the way that I look at it. One of the main pillars of franchising, and it was discussed kind of in the feedback from the last session, and certainly one of the big goals of marketers is to build a strong brand, to build that awareness, to deliver on the brand promise, which attracts people that are loyal to the brand and obviously strong unit economics, et cetera. But it turns out that those things are also the things that attract franchisees and everyone to the brand. And so how do you tell this story? How do you balance your message of what your brand stands for to attract customers and franchisees alike? And where do they intersect? I think of tools like PR and just really there's a lot of different ways. Like if you look at how the IFA has the open for opportunity message and some of that grassroots engagement, there's dual opportunities. And so let's go into this breakout room and discuss the balance between consumer and franchise marketing. And then we will meet back for the top one or two takeaways from each group.
Just you guys let him know too that we have to shorten that because we want to make sure that we stay on schedule for everybody who's so busy. We've shortened the breakouts to about 20 minutes.
Yes. All right. Is everybody ready? I'll send you off.
All right, welcome back. Hopefully there were a lot of very good conversations going on the topic of balancing consumer and franchise marketing. So we've got about 10 minutes left. So you can share a couple of nuggets from each. We've got the full time here. So we'll start with Mary.
I think people are still coming in, so
Okay, we'll give it a second.
yes. Okay, now everybody should be in.
All right, everybody should be in, and we're going to go ahead and kick it off. We have 10 minutes left, so give us the top couple of takeaways from each group, and we'll go ahead and kick it over to Mary.
Awesome. Was looking for my mute button. I had a really great group again. We had awesome takeaways. I'll keep it short. One of the biggest ones was actually at the end of the call. Jorgen told us about the 80-20 rule. It's in a book by Claire Ortiz, but 20% of your social media posts can have a call to action, and the other 80% should be life-giving. They should establish trust and connection, personalization and excitement, so that your customers and your prospects can picture themselves in your brand doing what you provide, everything. We all really liked that. And then we talked about kind of just, it's different with franchisees and employees, the instant accessibility of communication. You kind of got to tweak it. People are looking for a problem to be solved. We also talked about how the online persona and experience that you portray should always match up to what happens in person. It's really important to make sure franchisees are aware of the customer communication and online presence that's going on, to make sure it's replicated and enforced, obviously, in the locations. But it was really great, and obviously comes down to making a connection with these types of people. They can be very similar, and the communication styles can be different. Thanks.
Awesome. I really like that. I like the 80-20 rule. Let's go to Brandy, because I think that our group, I was in this group for a bit of time, and that's also something that came up. But Brandy, do you want to share any of the top takeaways?
Sure, yes, I have two top takeaways. We had a great group, lots of good conversation. So the first thing was we were talking with Jeff, who is a partner in a supplier in the franchising space. And he said often in working with both consumer and franchise marketing teams that, you know, there might be platforms, technology, software that each team is using separately. Example, HubSpot or call center or follow-up lead nurturing type software programs, that if the consumer and fran dev teams came together, there could be ways to save money, ways to increase leads coming in, sales, etc. I know we had a similar situation here where our fran dev team was using Lumen to follow up with leads, which was a automation software program that helps you follow up with leads via text. And, you know, that's something, of course, we can use on the consumer side. So I think that's something to consider. There's lots of ways to save money. And, you know, your fran dev teams might be using something that you're not using on the consumer side to help close leads. The other piece, which this is actually from you, Ryan, and I'll let you wrap this up, but you know your audience and think about the journey that they're going on, because with any brand, digital marketing, the web is the last mile in marketing. So anything you're doing on the consumer side is going to impact your candidates when they go out there and they search for your brand. The messages out there, if executed well within social media, will definitely impact your candidates and encourage them to, you know, buy business. But I think you summed it up perfectly, Ryan. Do you want to talk through how you talked about feeding the beast and just keeping things looking well out there for your brand?
Yeah, so it ties in perfectly with what Mary mentioned in the 80-20 rule that they discussed, which is a way on the consumer side to work in some of those call to actions. But number one, know your audience and where they hang out. So for example, I'm a franchisee of an emerging brand here in Dallas, and franchisees for this brand, in person and online, there's a specific set of places that they hang out, like in terms of the idea. And so the development team has it absolutely drilled for exactly what they're looking for the franchisees. So imagine the journey of someone becomes interested in the brand. they are obviously they go through the development process, but along the way, they're doing a lot of research, and typically they're doing a lot of this research prior to even reaching out to a brand. And so if you're executing well on social and you're in social, digital, as well as in person, that will help create the flywheel, and that'll help people kind of feel the energy of a brand. And so if, as you execute your marketing playbooks well, specifically as it relates to storytelling and branding and those types of things, there is tremendous opportunity, because once they land on your site and go land on your socials, you can retarget them. But from the organic content that you're putting out, it can help reinforce, this is something that I want to be a part of. I believe in their mission, vision, values, those types of things. And there's all different types of ways to tell those stories. So having that said, we're going to kick it over to Andrea.
Okay, great. So I actually spoke on this topic at IFA with Larissa and Christy. And the funny thing is that I went into this session thinking it is very clear, it's very definitive, there is complete overlap. Why are we even talking about this, right? So key takeaway, but I learned a lot. So key takeaways, Bill actually came up with a brilliant point. He reminded us of the Domino's campaign, where it was like something like where they led with consumer, but it was 95% of our employees become franchise owners. Holy cow, how powerful is that? You've captured hearts and minds of the potential buyer of the pizza, as well as the potential buyer of the franchisor. Very cool. But then I was, Carissa was like, I sell hydraulic hoses over my head. But she's like, one has nothing to do with the other. In one, I'm selling an investment instrument, and the other I'm selling a need to somebody who needs that solution. I don't know what that is, but at the same time, we have Hannah, who's like, she has a gym or a personal trainers, and every single one of those people could become a franchisor, a franchisee rather. So everybody really was very product specific. What are you selling? Who is your target audience? Is there overlap? I still say you have to start with the brand. You have to start with the core value proposition, which is perceived benefits divided by cost. You have to capture hearts and minds on both ends. I think one person should own that and then adapt it to each. In my feeling that's an ideal world, and as Bill's demonstrated, that's what happened with Domino's. So that's what we had.
Beautifully said. We have 2 minutes left, and we'll kick it to Catherine and then Sherry.
Right. So we also had a similar discussion about the crossover, and that's our conclusion was that when there is that crossover marketing, that's when it works best. We had the other big takeaway that we had that kind of ties into this is that personal aspect. Anytime that you can reach, whether it's a customer or potential franchise owner, when you can reach them with that personal touch, showing who you are as a brand, and whether it's involvement in local community, really personifying that small business owner. Customers want to get involved with a brand that they feel like is that they can be part of the culture and that they are part of their own community. And then in turn, that can turn into potential franchisees. Now, it doesn't apply to every line of business, of course, but that aspect where you're growing your consumer front and then you have your franchisee front is what our conclusion was the most successful.
And that local connection happens both digitally and in field engagement. And so lastly, Sherry.
To wrap it up, first of all, thank you everybody for participating. Thank you facilitators, and thank you to Ryan, the host. I must say that it was brilliant, but I have to say, going back to all of adding the human side to our brands and why we lead with consumer, because basically you need to have a strong consumer connection to drive the franchise leads, to get the prospective franchisees engaged and to have them come on board. And then it leads to the success of that individual franchisee. But just remember that through those touch points that you have, those really incredible moments that you can get even with a business to business franchise, like we talked about with Stephanie, where she realized that the strong consumer side of it, that is so powerful. Do not forget to use every channel that you can, from videos, from social, from PR, from digital marketing. Use it. It's very strong. It's very powerful. And let's not forget working together, franchise development, marketing, and consumer marketing. It is the golden ticket. It is what is going to work. And without further ado, I want to also thank IFA staff for putting this all together. And remember that we are doing these virtual workshops every other month. The next one, because we could not do it in April, will be in June, and then we'll be on schedule. So I hope to see everybody here and more then. Is there
June
any
15th to be exact, and invite a friend to the next one
or two? Enjoy the
Sherry, last thing, we're 1 minute over, but FCXC, the dates on that is June. Well, there's CFE credits on June 20th, but that's June 21st through the 23rd. And so get registered for that. Any other comments on that?
The registration link is in the chat if anybody wants to click on it right now.
And we will share, is there anything in the chat that we need to share to those that attended?
We can share.
Grab some. We'll talk about it. We'll add something for
Share
that.
some. Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Thanks for joining.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Everyone. Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, Terry.
Thank you. Thanks, Ryan.